The Democrat worldview is dangerous. Hey everyone, I'm Kristan Hawkins. Welcome to this new episode of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast.
Hi, I'm Autumn Higashi, and this is my new show, Unapologetic, powered by Students for Life. It's 2022. We don't have time to be scared of being publicly pro-life because we have bigger things to focus on, like saving lives. But I know, it can be hard. The moment you open your mouth, you are bombarded with pro-choice keyboard warriors attacking your every word. And it can be intimidating unless you know exactly how to defend your position. Truth fears no investigation. There's an answer to every question, a solution to every situation, and a way to care for women and children. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So, consider me your new pro-life best friend. We all know pro-abortion media is shoved in our face daily. Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, you name it. I want you to be able to understand how to break down their arguments and shine truth and light on this culture of death. I want you to not only know why you believe what you believe, but how to defend it with truth and love. Because we are the pro-life generation, and we are unapologetic.
We hear a lot these days about how Americans are polarized on many issues. In some cases, this is a negative. But in a few areas of life, those things are more black and white than others. And to be quite honest, they're deserving of polarization. There's nothing more deserving of polarization than abortion. One side in this debate wants to protect children from harm. The other side wants to deny those children, who are human beings, their value, their worthiness of life, and wants to see them dismembered, crushed, poisoned, and thrown into landfills or flushed down the toilet. When it comes to abortion in general, I think many people in America, many Americans find themselves, or they would call themselves, in the middle of the debate. The Republican and Democrat political parties are planted firmly on polar opposite ends of the debate. Republicans should be, and they have a platform to work unapologetically to abolish abortion at any stage of pregnancy for any reason, while Democrats are working to expand abortion, fund it with taxpayer dollars, find loopholes in federal and state laws to circumvent any pro-life court rulings and laws to expand abortion in all 9 months up until the moment of birth and for any reason. To be honest with you, a lot of times I think that Democrats are even more entrenched in their pro-abortion platform and stance than Republicans are in their pro-life one. So today I'm bringing on a guest who dedicates a lot of his time thinking through why Democrats are so extreme on abortion and what we should possibly expect from them given their corrupt worldview their party is rooted in. My guest today is John Zmirak. He is a senior editor at The Stream and co-author of 10 books, including The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Catholicism, which is hilarious because there's a picture of nuns and big guns on the front, which triggered probably a lot of Catholics. He's also the co-author of the book God's Guns and the Government and the Race to Save Our Century with Jason Jones, founder of the Vulnerable People Project and Movement, who's been a guest on this podcast before. John, welcome. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, Kristan. It's an honor to talk to you. I love the work your organization does, and we try to highlight it as much as possible over at stream.org.
You definitely do. You're awesome. I remember the first time I got to meet you. I think we were in a cab together going to the Young Americans Foundation.
Yeah, America's Future Foundation. Yeah, I gave a talk there that they had to take off of YouTube.
Of course. I was so excited to meet you because I've read your writings for years. And of course, Jason Jones, who gives me signed autographed book copies of his book, The Race to Save a Century, every single time I meet him. You are the co-author of that book. So I feel like I know you. So thank you for all that you do. You are, unapologetically, every week calling out the extremist agenda of Democrats, of liberals in our country, and holding their feet to the fire when it comes to abortion, which we need more of you in the media. You recently wrote in one of your articles at thestream.org that Justice Alito's ruling, quote, shredded the Democrats' arguments in favor of abortion. What did you mean by that?
Well, if you sit down and read his majority opinion for Dobbs, which I did the same day it was issued. It takes about 2 hours. It's a masterpiece of legal reasoning and historical scholarship. He shows that Roe v. Wade was bad law. Now, the left has admitted that for a long time. Ruth Bader Ginsburg admitted it. Lawrence Tribe admitted it, that the Supreme Court just made it up. They just pulled the right to abortion out of thin air. And they didn't even really try very hard to ground it in the Constitution. This was the high watermark of the Supreme Court acting like a legislature, or like five philosopher kings ruling by decree. Then Planned Parenthood v. Casey came along, and it didn't try really to ground abortion rights in the Constitution. Yeah. It just did a bunch of hand waving about how, fundamental liberty is in the Constitution and abortion is a liberty and the universe is a mystery. Dude, don't hog the bong, man. I'm getting the munchies. I mean, it really was something like a college sophomore during a stoned bull session would pull out of a bodily orifice. Alito goes through and shows the standard tests for whether or not a right is implied or enumerated in the Constitution, how you determine whether the Constitution means to protect our right to do X, Y, or Z. And he shows how one of the key tests is the customs and the morals and the laws that were prevailing when that part of the Constitution was adopted. So the key element of Casey was the 14th Amendment. They said the liberty right of the 14th Amendment protects a woman's right to have an abortion. Alito says, well, let's do the same historical context test that we do for other supposed implied rights. What were the abortion laws like when the 14th Amendment was adopted in, I think, 1867? Oh, it was illegal in every state. Huh. Did courts then invalidate those abortion laws because the 14th Amendment had passed? No. Did anyone ever think to argue that the 14th Amendment protected abortion? No, not even in Roe v. Wade. So this is something that Justice Kennedy made up in 1992. It was just an invention, and that's arbitrary. That's called dictatorship. When someone in power makes something up and imposes it on the population, that's rule by decree. That's authoritarianism. That's Stalin. That's Hitler. That's not America. So after the ruling came out, I noticed something interesting. Not one liberal commentator came out to defend the legal argumentation of Roe v. Wade or Planned Parenthood v. Casey. Not one. None of them said, well, no, Justice Alito, you're wrong. Here's my constitutional argument. Instead, they said, set fires, attack people's homes, kill. And what that told me was that we got to the point in our national exorcism where the demon stops trying to do clever theological arguments with the priest doing the exorcism and instead starts spitting vomit and spinning heads and throwing people around the room.
I have to process what you just did. That was so right on. And I think what you just spelled out for us is so important because this is what we're hearing. And I'm sure our Students for Life leaders are going to be hearing on campuses this semester is the 14th Amendment guarantees a woman's right to abortion. And what you just showed is Alito shredded that abortion wasn't legal when the 14th Amendment was adopted. There was no push to immediately invalidate all the state laws that had abortion illegal when this amendment was adopted. I think that's incredibly important, but I also just can't get over your screaming into the microphone about. That is so true, though. What you said is sadly so true. There is not legal academic arguments being made as to why Roe is good case law, because as you mentioned, Lawrence Tribe, who I think, and then there was a lawyer from Yale, Eli came out, he in the 70s, a pro-abortion attorney. I was reading his column he'd written in the 70s decrying Roe as a progressive bad case law. This is something that is well known amongst even liberal progressive legal scholars that this was just bad law to begin with. And it was judicial activism.
What we're seeing now is Moloch screaming that his supply of human sacrifice is going to be cut off. I'm sorry, it's just now a plain battle between good and evil. The fig leaf, the polite fig leaf that we are arguing about the Constitution has been peeled away. The temple of Satan is one of the litigants now trying to file cases saying that abortion is a religious sacrifice for them, so it is covered by the First Amendment. Now, you don't see pro-choice groups denouncing this and saying, we want nothing to do with this. No, they are co-signing. They are letting the temple of Satan sign on in amicus curiae briefs in legal cases they are filing. So I'm sorry to sound like some backwoods fundamentalist, but we are dealing with principalities and powers here. It's really spooky and hideous. And I think a lot of people don't know the intellectual history of the pro-choice arguments that are out there. Nobody from the conversion of the Roman Empire up until the 18th century, we don't have record of anyone saying that abortion is justified and that abortion should be legal. There's literally no intellectual who wrote anything to that effect. No Jews, no Muslims, no Christians said that aborting children for sexual convenience is a good thing and should be allowed by the government. The first person to make that argument was the Marquis de Sade, who was a depraved French aristocrat who was imprisoned for torturing prostitutes, kidnapping them and torturing them for sexual pleasure. He wrote hundreds of pages of sickening pornography that entailed kidnapping, child molestation, murder, incest, elaborate blasphemies involving the Eucharist. I mean, the most disgusting filth. No normal person can read more than 1 or 2 pages of the Marquis de Sade. It's that disgusting. The Marquis de Sade, in his book, Philosophy in the Bedroom, makes the first pro-choice argument in Western history, where he says that men can walk away from the results of sexual behavior. For women to be equal, they have to be able to do that too. So abortion should be legal. That argument got picked up by Jean-Paul Sartre and his girlfriend, Simone de Beauvoir. She mainstreamed the argument in her book, The Second Sex. She wrote a whole book in praise of the Marquis de Sade, by the way, showing that she knew the work. So the Marquis de Sade's argument goes to Simone de Beauvoir, and then it gets parroted by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And none of these people realize that they are repeating the rationalizations of a psychopathic pornographer. But that is the argument.
Wow. Thank you for that history. I'm going to be Googling with caution later tonight, I think. I guess the question I have is, does the average run-of-the-mill, like my whole family growing up was Democrat. I'm very proud that I, got a lot of them to change their party registration. But my whole family was Democrat. Everybody I knew was Democrat. Like that was just the thing you were when you registered to vote. Like there wasn't even like a discussion. Do you want to be Republican, Democrat, or independent? You were just a Democrat.
My parents said Republicans are for the rich. And I remember it was Roe v. Wade that changed them. I'll never forget when Roe v. Wade happened. I was 8 years old. My mother saw the news on television and she was upset. And I asked her to explain it to me. And she said, well, you know how a baby lives in his mother's stomach? Yeah. Well, now a doctor can take it out and kill it. I said, but that's not legal. She said, it is now. I said, in America? She said, yeah. I could never wrap my head around that and never have been able to since. And at age 11, I signed up for the New York Right to Life Party, and I was getting signatures for their candidates on the ballot.
Oh my gosh, you sound like my oldest son Gunnar. So I can just this is his future, being John. I guess what, if you go back to all of this history, I have a hard time contemplating, average run-of-the-mill normal Democrats really believe in what their party platform really is. I mean, is Democratic still the correct definition for their party? I mean, should they change their party to another name, because I don't think, what their party was 20 years ago and then what it is today are even remotely close.
Think about this. Remember back when Bill Clinton was president, the rhetoric they were using was, we want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. Now it's, shout your abortion. We're doing them as satanic sacrifices. We're wearing bloody dresses and boasting about our abortions. But you see, the previous stance was always a polite facade. It was always fake. What we have to realize is abortion is the implication of the sexual revolution. It is necessary for the sexual revolution to work. If you take away abortion, women will suddenly start being a lot more careful who they sleep with. The supply of ready, easy sex will dry up. The sexual revolution will be reversed. And so that is what we are fighting about. The left sees the sexual revolution as absolutely essential. It's funny, they think freedom starts at the bedroom door and also stops there. I mean, you notice all the people who argued, a woman has absolute autonomy over her body. Well, okay, so we can't force her to take a vaccine? Oh no, she has to take a vaccine. Can we stop her from prostitution? No, we can stop her from being a prostitute. Can we stop her from taking crystal meth? Well, no, we can stop that. Can we stop her from working at less than the minimum wage? No, she can't work at less than the minimum wage. It turns out bodily autonomy only applies to sex. Everywhere else, you belong to Uncle Sam. But we're going to carve out this one little area of libertarian freedom in the bedroom. And in order for that to work, you have to be able to kill the baby to get him out of the way.
It doesn't seem very democratic to me at all.
They wanted all 50 states to be bound by the dictates of a few judges in Washington. All that happened with the overturning of Roe was giving the issue back to the voters, saying abortion is not so sacred that you can't even vote on it, which was the status quo position. Abortion is not as sacred as the right of free speech or the right to vote or the right to have a gun.
Do you think that it was, I guess I'm going to go off script here, so I didn't prep you in advance of this question. But I have heard it a couple of times. I've heard it in the pro-life circles where folks are saying, Alito in his decision on Dobbs made a critical mistake in not, stating emphatically that the right to life is protected by the 14th Amendment. Have you heard that? And what's your response? Because their response is we should not have sent back to the states. It was a major mistake to have that done because I literally heard Lila over at Live Action, one of our former interns at Students for Life. I was speaking with her and she said something the other day and I was like, I need to talk to you about that further because the argument was that the mistake had been made. Alito's mistake was that he didn't state clearly that this was a right in the 14th Amendment and that this isn't actually up for the states or anyone to decide.
You have to take into account political reality. And to do that would have been like Abraham Lincoln trying to free all the slaves on his first day in office. He believed the slaves should be freed, but he believed that he lived in a real world with genuine limitations. So he acted prudently within the circumstances that he faced. The Emancipation Proclamation only applied to the Confederate States. So the slaves in Delaware and Maryland continued to be slaves until after the Civil War when the 13th Amendment was passed. Because Abraham Lincoln knew if he tried to free all the slaves at once, he would have had a rebellion in the North. And we might have lost the Civil War. So you don't do dumb things just because they satisfy your sense of logical neatness. Yes, I would like to see abortion illegal in 50 states. I would like to see doctors who do illegal abortions on death row. But I don't want a civil war in America. And I don't want the status quo of abortion on demand everywhere. I don't want that to be maintained. And if we make it all or nothing, no abortions at all in California and New York right now, or the only that's all we'll settle for. Otherwise, you have to keep abortion on demand everywhere. We will lose and we'll get nothing. It's perfectly principled to do the best you actually can. Thomas Aquinas said, sometimes it's imprudent even to preach the gospel because it will just get you killed. Sometimes even the most basic command, preaching the gospel, sometimes it's imprudent and you shouldn't do it. Likewise, it would have been fantastically imprudent, I think, for Alito to have written that we are now saying each of the 50 states must outlaw abortion, because it would have been defied. Nobody would have listened. It wouldn't have had any real world effect. Do you think the people in California who let the looters run wild during the George Floyd riots, you think they're going to say, well, we have to obey the Supreme Court because the rule of law is all important? No, of course not. You know, we are doing an exorcism, and exorcisms take a long time. They're exhausting. They're dangerous. They're not bam, 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 done. They are tedious, horrible procedures that take hours and days. That's the metaphor. We are doing an exorcism of America, and the demon's grip is tight.
I'm just typing every single word you said, so don't mind me. I'm going to process it and write about it later. So I'll try to quote you because I think what you just gave was a perfect explanation to this argument that we're hearing. And I think we need to be very careful in kind of condemning the Dobbs decision. I certainly would not condemn the Dobbs decision. In another piece you wrote for the stream, I read probably your pieces more than anybody else's, mainly because Jason Jones always forwards them to me. And it's like, you must read this now. So I'm like, oh, okay. You recently co-wrote a piece with Jason, and of course he forwarded it to me, that said, once a critical mass of citizens sees the poisonous fruits of the pro-choice lie and all the other reckless, destructive policies of left, then the pro-life movement will be able to shift its focus from abolishing abortion to a host of other issues that beg for attention. I guess my question is, what do you envision happening between now and then? How bad does that polarization and separation between right and left have to be before there is a realization that this anti-life worldview of the left is rotten and not worth defending at all?
Well, let's pick one segment of it, okay? Currently in New York City, more Black children are aborted than born. More than 50%. That's not going to be true here in Dallas, where I live. I'm from New York City. I'm going to be living in a place where the Black kids get born. I think Black Americans are going to notice, wait a minute, we're not losing population share, we're gaining population share. We've got a bunch of happy kids. We've got our next generation coming to life. Whereas in these blue cities that are crime ridden with heavy taxes, the Black population is shrinking or staying flat. Maybe the Democrats don't deserve our votes. You're going to see in the blue states, the states that keep abortion legal are also the ones that won't let you have guns to protect yourself, the ones that have heavy taxes, the ones that don't want you to have a car, that want to force you to have an electric car you can't afford. They're the states that don't enforce shoplifting laws. They are going to become more and more unlivable hellholes compared to happy, shiny red states where life is valued, private property is valued, gun rights are valued, where really the old America exists. The reason the left is so freaked out by Dobbs is precisely that they know if half the country is pro-life, it will do better in every way than the other half. And they can't stand the competition. So they need to impose it on the whole country so there's no comparison. So that you can't look from one state to the other and say, but it's working in Florida. Look, it's what they did with COVID. They went insane over COVID. Florida said no. Florida said, no, we're not doing the mask. We're not shutting down the churches. We're not closing down the economy. We're not closing everything except the abortion clinics, the bars, and the liquor stores. And Florida did better than the blue states in terms of people dying from COVID. That proves they were lying about COVID. Same with abortion. If you have a bunch of big, prosperous red states where abortion is mostly illegal, they're going to see women are not dressed like the Handmaid's Tale. They're not wearing hijabs. They're not being oppressed. They're not being locked up in huts and not taught to read. None of their hysterical propaganda has any basis in reality. And that will kill them. And that's why they are freaking out. Because frankly, most of these pro-choicers, they don't live in Mississippi. They don't live in Oklahoma. These abortion laws will have no effect on their depraved personal lives. Why are they so upset about what's going to happen to somebody in another state? You really think it's idealism? No, they can't take the competition. Just like the reason they had to build the Berlin Wall was because so many people were moving from East Berlin to West Berlin to get away from communism and live in the capitalist West. They couldn't take the comparison. They couldn't conquer West Berlin, so they built a wall to pen up the citizens. Maybe California will have to build a wall to stop people fleeing the state to Texas and Oklahoma.
I would actually be pro that. Let me just stop you there. I would be pro that because they keep destroying all of our red states. Just saying. California, Newsom, go ahead. Start that wall, buddy.
Build a wall. On the other hand, the people who are moving to Texas from the blue states are voting conservative because they know what they left behind. I'm a native New Yorker. I still don't even drive a car. I love New York City, but I can't live there anymore. It's not a free country in any sense of the word, except like Staten Island.
I think this is a really important point that you made, that the left can't take the comparison. I was thinking about this earlier today about, what it will mean. I mean, we will have setbacks in the pro-life movement in the coming weeks, in the coming months, guaranteed, because trust me, Republicans will screw this up. They will find a way in some states to screw this up, and they've already have. So, there you go. Call me jaded, whatever. But I think the reversal of Roe and seeing Roe reverse has sent shockwaves throughout the world, because to even with everything that's going on, even with the president who doesn't remember who he is or where he's at half the time, we are still looked upon as this leader of the free world. And I think that in itself, just the Supreme Court reversing this almost 50-year-old decision was significant in terms of culture change throughout the world. And then thinking about these states where you're going to have some of our team members at Students for Life, surprise, pro-life organization, a bunch of my team members are always end up pregnant, having babies. But, just in the past month, we've had 3 babies born on our team. And I was thinking about these little children whose mothers fight to abolish abortion, who will grow up in states where abortion is not legal. And you will have whole generations of children coming from states where abortion was never like this parachute option if the birth control fails, where you'll have other children in other states being grown up to being taught that, just kill it, it's a blob of tissue. I think that is, from a social science perspective, that would be something I would be studying if I were in school right now, in grad school, of what's the cultural impact of 20 years of children growing up in some states where killing a baby is, of course, wrong and not available, and in other states where it is. And I think what you were saying earlier about they can't take the comparison, what is really human flourishing and human happiness, of what's going to be the difference between these children in the red state versus these children in the blue state.
Also, it says something profound about America. Growing up, I was always kind of ambivalent about America, my own country, because its highest court said killing your baby was a fundamental right, a basic part of American freedom. If that's true, it's not worth defending. It's certainly not worth exporting to the rest of the world. Now, that filthy lie that slander on America's founders has been removed from the law books. It's no longer taught in every law school that the Constitution protects killing children for sexual convenience. I think that's extremely important.
Absolutely. Amen, brother. Thank you for coming on today, John. It's so great to talk to you. Where can folks, since I was already taking notes, you were schooling me, where can folks read all of your columns in the future?
I write 5 days a week at stream.org, and I'm often on the Eric Metaxas show every week.
That's right. He's a big fan of you, because I always see Eric's posts with lots of exclamation points when you were on the Eric Metaxas show. Hopefully,
we were at Yale together.
Awesome. I hope you can get on his new talk show. I saw he's doing like a talk show.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of like Carol Burnett, Joe Franklin, Tonight Show. I'm pushing him in the Joe Franklin direction.
Well, I hope to see you on. You would be a terrific guest on the new Conservative Tonight Show. Thanks, John. Thank you so much. Thank you all for tuning into this conversation. I hope it was informative for you as just much as informative for me. I was certainly taking notes, so I hope you are as well. The great thing about podcasts is you can listen to it again, and you can share this episode on your social media channels with all your pro-life friends. Make sure you subscribe and they subscribe. See you next week.